Greetings, dear friends, and welcome to a tale of resilience, passion, and the transformative power of love, set against the backdrop of a beloved culinary establishment. Enjoy the story. Jerry Connors had it all: a thriving restaurant, a loyal customer base, and a reputation as one of the city's top chefs. His establishment, the Gourmet Grotto, was the talk of the town, drawing in discerning diners from all over who sought out his innovative, flavor-packed dishes. With its warm, inviting ambiance and impeccable service, the Gourmet Grotto had become a beloved fixture in the community, a place where people came not just to eat, but to savor an unforgettable dining experience. But little did Jerry know, his trusted head chef was plotting his downfall. It all started about a year ago, when a new fast food joint, Burger Blitz, opened up just down the street from the Gourmet Grotto. Suddenly, the customers who had once flocked to Jerry's door were abandoning him in droves, lured away by the promise of cheap, quick eats. Jerry had hoped it was just a passing fad, that his loyal patrons would soon remember the unparalleled quality and artistry of his cuisine. But as business continued to nosedive, he realized something more sinister was at play. The truth finally came to light when Jerry discovered that his head chef, a culinary genius named Liam, had been conspiring to sabotage the restaurant. Liam, it seemed, had been planning to jump ship and take a job at a rival eatery, but in order to secure his new position, he had been instructed to systematically drive away Jerry's customers. Liam was jealous of the attention and praise I was getting, Jerry later revealed. He wanted to be the star, and he was willing to destroy everything I'd built to get there. Liam had started by making subtle changes to the menu, swapping out high-quality ingredients for cheaper alternatives. Slowly but surely, the dishes that had once been the talk of the town began to lose their luster. Customers started complaining about the decline in quality, and word began to spread that the Gourmet Grotto was no longer the culinary destination it once was. Liam didn't stop there. He also began to sabotage the restaurant's operations, deliberately scheduling staff shortages and creating chaos in the kitchen. Meals were taking longer to prepare, and the once impeccable service became sloppy and disorganized. Frustrated patrons began abandoning the restaurant, opting instead for the quick and consistent offerings at Burger Blitz. By the time Jerry caught wind of the betrayal and fired Liam, the damage was already done. Customers had abandoned the restaurant in droves, and Jerry found himself drowning in debt. Desperate to salvage his dream, he made the gut-wrenching decision to sell the property. As Jerry made his final rounds through the empty dining room, the once vibrant space now eerily silent, he felt a deep sense of loss. This place had been his passion, his life's work, and now it was all slipping away. With a heavy heart, Jerry made his way to the back alley, intending to lock up for the last time. But as he stepped outside, he noticed a movement in the shadows near the bushes. Cautiously, he approached the area, only to discover a woman and a young girl huddled there, clearly in distress. The woman, whose name was Lisa, quickly apologized, explaining that she and her 5-year-old daughter, Amy, had been using the restaurant's back alley as a makeshift shelter. They had grown accustomed to getting food from the waitresses, but with the establishment now closed, they had nowhere else to turn. Jerry's heart sank as he realized they were homeless, their lives in shambles. In that moment, he couldn't help but see a reflection of his own struggles in their plight. Moved by their situation, Jerry made a split-second decision. "Stay," he told them, "and you can clean up the place in exchange for food and shelter." Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious?" she asked, clutching Amy tightly. "We don't want to impose. We can find somewhere else." Jerry held up a hand, silencing her protests. "Please," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I insist. You and your daughter deserve a safe place to stay, and I could use the help getting this place in order before I—" His voice trailed off, the weight of his decision to sell the restaurant still heavy on his mind. Lisa studied him for a moment, searching his face for any hint of ulterior motive, but all she saw was genuine compassion. Slowly she nodded, a tentative smile spreading across her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. This means more to us than you know. And so, Lisa and Amy made themselves at home in the quiet, empty restaurant, throwing themselves into the task of cleaning and organizing the space. Jerry was amazed at the efficiency and care with which they worked, Lisa's attention to detail, and Amy's infectious energy transforming the once neglected dining room. Over the next few days, Jerry would return to check on their progress, and each time, he found himself drawn deeper into Lisa and Amy's world. He learned that Lisa had once been a regular patron at the Gourmet Grotto, back when she was newly married to a man named David. But then, in a cruel twist of fate, David had abandoned them, leaving Lisa and her daughter destitute. As Lisa shared her story, Jerry felt a pang of empathy. He knew all too well the pain of having everything you've worked for ripped away, and seeing the resilience and determination in Lisa's eyes, the way she refused to let her circumstances define her, only served to deepen his admiration. One afternoon, as Jerry sat with Lisa and Amy, sharing a meal she had expertly prepared, he made an impulsive offer. "When I reopen this place," he said, "I want you to be the chef." Lisa's eyes widened in surprise. You can't be serious," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I mean, I'm just a—" Jerry held up a hand, silencing her. "I've tasted your cooking, Lisa," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It's extraordinary, and I think together we can make this place better than it's ever been." For a moment Lisa was speechless, the weight of his words settling over her. Then a smile slowly blossomed on her face, and she nodded, her eyes shining with a newfound hope. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's do it." The day the prospective buyers were scheduled to arrive, Jerry felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. This was his last chance to save his beloved restaurant, and he was determined to make it count. As the potential investors filtered in, Jerry proudly showcased Lisa's culinary skills, confident that her dishes would seal the deal. And he was right. The investors were unanimously impressed, raving about the depth of flavor and artistic presentation of the food. Jerry watched with a growing sense of optimism as they sampled dish after dish, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine delight. But then, to Jerry's horror, one of the investors turned out to be Lisa's ex-husband, David. The man immediately recognized Lisa and Amy, and his face contorted with a mixture of shock and rage. "What the hell is going on here?" David bellowed, his voice echoing through the dining room. "Lisa, you get your ass over here and bring that brat with you!" Lisa froze, her body going rigid with fear. Amy, sensing her mother's distress, clung tightly to her skirt, her eyes wide and frightened. Furious, Jerry stepped in, positioning himself between Lisa and David. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said, his voice low and menacing. "This is my restaurant, and I won't tolerate any kind of abuse or harassment." But David was undeterred, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Jerry. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere," he sneered. "In fact, I'm about to make you an offer you can't refuse. This place is a gold mine, and I want in." Jerry felt his blood boil. "I think you're forgetting something," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is my restaurant, and I don't take kindly to people who threaten my staff." David let out a harsh laugh. "Your staff?" he scoffed. "That woman over there is my wife, and that little brat is my daughter. I have every right to be here, and I'm not leaving until I get what's mine." Jerry's eyes narrowed as he realized the full extent of David's depravity. "Lisa is no longer your wife," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "And Amy is not your daughter, not anymore." With that, he turned to face the stunned investors, his expression resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I'm afraid I can no longer entertain any offers from this individual." He gestured towards David, his disgust palpable. "You see, this man has a history of abandoning his family, leaving them destitute and homeless, and I won't have him anywhere near my restaurant, or the people I care about." The investors exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unsure of how to proceed. But then, one of them, a well-respected businessman named William Sinclair, stepped forward. "Well, Mr. Connors," he said, his voice measured and calm, "it seems you've got quite a situation on your hands. But if what you say is true, then I'm inclined to believe you. And I must say, the food your chef has prepared is truly exceptional. I'd be honored to invest in your establishment. On one condition. Jerry felt a glimmer of hope. And what would that be, Mr. Sinclair? Sinclair's gaze flickered to Lisa and Amy, a warm smile spreading across his face. I want you to keep this family on as an integral part of the team. Their contribution to the success of this restaurant is undeniable, and I won't have it any other way. Jerry felt a surge of gratitude, and he nodded firmly. Done, he said, extending his hand to Sinclair. Thank you, sir. This means the world to me and to them. With that, Jerry turned to face David, his expression hardening. As for you, he said, his voice laced with steel, I suggest you leave, now. And if I ever see you near this place or my family again, I won't hesitate to have you arrested. David opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Jerry's eyes told him it would be a futile effort. Cursing under his breath, he stormed out, his dreams of cashing in on the restaurant's success crumbling around him. 3 months later, the restaurant had undergone a stunning transformation. The dining area had been renovated, with warm, inviting colors and elegant, modern furnishings that created a cozy yet sophisticated atmosphere. The kitchen, however, was the true showpiece, a state-of-the-art facility that had been specially designed to accommodate Lisa's culinary magic. On the night of the grand reopening, the place was packed to the brim, with eager diners eager to experience the new and improved gourmet grotto. As Jerry watched the bustling activity, a sense of pride and relief washed over him. Against all odds, he had managed to save his dream, and he owed it all to the remarkable woman who now stood at the helm of his kitchen. Lisa, her sleeves rolled up and a determined gleam in her eye, barked orders to her team of chefs, her movements fluid and efficient. The energy in the kitchen was palpable, and the aromas that wafted out into the dining room were enough to make even the most jaded foodie's mouth water. As the evening wore on, Jerry couldn't help but steal glances at Lisa, marveling at the way she had transformed not just the restaurant, but his own life. She had gone from a homeless, desperate woman to the driving force behind the gourmet grotto's resurgence, and Jerry couldn't help but feel a deep sense of admiration and affection for her. When the last dish had been served and the last patron had left, Jerry found Lisa in the empty dining room, her eyes shining with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Wordlessly, he approached her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Lisa," he said, his voice soft and tinged with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. This place, it's alive again, all because of you." Lisa felt a blush creep across her cheeks as she met his gaze. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jerry," she murmured. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Jerry reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "That's because you're extraordinary, Lisa," he said, his eyes shining with sincerity. "From the moment I met you, huddled in that alley, I knew there was something special about you. And now, seeing you in action, leading this kitchen with such passion and skill," he paused, taking a deep breath. "I don't want to lose you, Lisa. Not again." Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she realized the implication of his words. "Jerry, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. In response, Jerry dropped to one knee, never once breaking eye contact with her. "Lisa," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "will you marry me?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Lisa stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never dared to dream that her life could take such an unexpected turn, that the man who had saved her and her daughter from the brink of despair would now be offering her his heart. Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded, a radiant smile spreading across her face. "Yes," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Jerry, I will marry you." Jerry let out a breath he didn't even realize he'd been holding, and in one fluid motion, he rose to his feet and swept Lisa into his arms, twirling her around the empty dining room. Their laughter echoed through the space, a joyful symphony that seemed to breathe new life into the very walls of the gourmet grotto. As they held each other close, Jerry knew that this was more than just the reopening of his restaurant. It was the start of a new chapter, one filled with love, hope, and the promise of a future brighter than either of them could have ever imagined.
All right, everyone's presentations are done,
Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward.
Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email.
Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly.
The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam.
My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father.
Well, you could hardly call it being raised.
After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing.
Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account.
Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out.
I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything.
The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke.
Take care. That was our last conversation.
Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment.
Yet, my father never visited me even once.
I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education.
Listen up.
Our work can change the future of our employees.
Don't drag us down.
On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly.
There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle.
At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state.
But that was long ago.
Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose.
I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry.
I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him.
Someone was watching me with a smirk.
In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go.
You are the latter.
It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened.
Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results.
As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty.
Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey.
I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day.
Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today?
Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today.
I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly.
They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job.
Having joined the company wanting to do customer service.
I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look.
To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally,
Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance.
As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick.
If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America.
Nick began the presentations.
Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them.
The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me.
There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer.
He was likely talking about me.
I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently.
Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right.
After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking.
The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation.
Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life.
I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving.
I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer.
I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email.
Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home.
The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick! What's wrong?
Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick.
And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires.
Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen.
They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday.
Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips.
The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally.
President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles.
Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief.
Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction.
Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?
We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs.
Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan.
If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized.
Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do.
I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you.
Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you.
Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind.
Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening.
After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason.
He was demanding, get his boss here immediately.
It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training.
What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next.
Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation.
If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York.
When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was.
As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor.
I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room.
What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner.
No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread,
hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry.
Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology.
He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done?
Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason.
I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him.
Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand.
I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor.
Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside.
Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part.
I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers.
Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone.
It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault.
This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf.
He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show.
Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation.
The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared.
Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment?
Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance.
Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too.
It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized.
As for the other requests,
Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load.
I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office.
I was amazed he still hadn't apologized.
You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company.
I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here.
When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it.
Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted.
Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent.
I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned,
I'm moving to the sales department soon.
If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse.
Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it.
On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer.
It's still working hours.
Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer.
Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived.
I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name.
They look good. What are you talking about?
These are plastic bottles.
I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea.
But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company.
It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email.
I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed.
He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important.
You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter.
Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble.
Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation.
Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment.
Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary.
Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too.
I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.